Her key didn't work. That's when she realized everything she thought she had was already gone. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to explain. My silence spoke louder than anything I could have said. That night, the house she called home no longer belonged to her. And the woman I once loved? She was already a stranger. As she stood outside, confused, shaking the doorknob like it would answer her questions, I was miles away. Calm. Because this wasn't the night I broke. It was the night I won without saying a word. But it didn't start here. It started the first time she said she was working late. And I believed her. She thought my silence meant weakness. But my silence was a weapon. Hello there, my friend. I'm glad you're here with me today. Stories like this aren't easy to tell, but they're real, and they leave a mark that never truly fades. I've lived long enough to know that trust is a fragile thing, and silence can be sharper than any blade. Before I go on, tell me in the comments, has anyone ever dismissed you because of your age? I read every word you share. Now, let's go back to where it all began. I built that house with my own hands. Every beam, every nail, every inch of wood carried my sweat. It wasn't just a place to sleep. It was the dream I bled for. When we first moved in, she stood in the doorway with tears in her eyes and called it our forever home. I believed her. Back then, I worked 2 shifts at the mill. Some nights I'd come home when the sky was still black, boots heavy with sawdust, back aching so bad I could barely stand. She'd be in the kitchen, waiting with a cup of coffee, telling me it would all be worth it. And I believed her every time. I sold a piece of land I inherited from my father to finish paying off that house. That land wasn't just dirt. It was history. It was my father's promise. And I gave it up so she could have the life she dreamed of. We raised our children under that roof, watched birthdays, Christmas mornings, and quiet evenings pass through its walls. The porch was where I first taught my son to hammer a nail, where she used to sit and laugh at my bad singing when we were young. It held everything that mattered. So when I watched her lean in close to another man, the sting wasn't just about betrayal. It was about everything I gave up to build something she had already walked away from in her heart. That house isn't just wood and stone. It's the story of my life. And she was willing to burn it down without striking a match. It started with something small. It always does. One night, she came home late, smelling like perfume that wasn't hers. She tossed her bag on the counter and looked at me like I was standing in her way. I asked if she'd eaten. She rolled her eyes and said, "Harold, you don't have to wait up like some sad old man. I have a life." She laughed a little after saying it, like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was the first crack she let slip through. That one line hit harder than any punch. I stood there, coffee in my hand, nodding like it didn't bother me. But inside, it burned. I remember every word she said that night. I remember the way she looked at me, not like a partner, not even like a friend, but like I was a weight she didn't want to carry anymore. I swallowed it, smiled the way old men do when they're trying not to bleed in front of someone they love, and said, "All right." She walked past me like I was invisible. And that's when I knew something had shifted. Not enough to prove anything, but enough that my heart stopped feeling like home to her. And whether she realized it or not, that was the moment I started remembering everything. The cracks didn't stay small for long. Once someone decides you don't matter anymore, their mask starts to slip piece by piece. It showed at the dinner table first. I set her plate down, same way I had for years, and she sighed like it was a burden. "You don't have to keep doing this, Harold," she said. "I'm not helpless." She pushed the food around like it disgusted her. Like the little things that used to mean love were now just annoying. Then it was the house. My house. She started talking about how modern couples sold their old properties and moved closer to the city. She laughed when I said I wasn't going anywhere. "You're too sentimental, Harold. It's just a house." Just a house. The same house I built from the ground up. The same house she once swore was our forever. And then came the trust. She stopped telling me where she was going. Stopped answering calls. She changed passwords on accounts we used to share. When I asked, she said, "I'm not your child, Harold. I don't owe you every little detail." She said it with a smile, like she wanted to see how much I'd take before I broke. I didn't break. I just listened. Watched. Every boundary she crossed, Every piece of respect she chipped away, I stored it quietly like nails in a box. Not to use yet, just to remember. Because the thing about silence is it makes people believe they're getting away with it. But silence doesn't mean blindness. It means I was taking notes. It started to feel like living with a stranger who wore my wife's face. She'd step out to take phone calls in the yard, pretending it was work, her voice suddenly soft and playful in a way it hadn't been with me in years. I'd walk by the window, and she'd turn her back like a guilty child caught sneaking candy. But this wasn't candy. This was something bigger. I noticed little things going missing. Not money exactly, but the way it moved. Transactions on accounts we'd built together. Small withdrawals at first, like she was testing how closely I was watching. Then bigger ones. When I asked about it, she brushed me off. Just paying bills, she said, like I hadn't managed those bills for 30 years. One night, I heard her whispering in the kitchen. She thought I was asleep. I could only catch a few words. I told you I'd handle it. And then a soft laugh that didn't belong to the woman I married. That laugh cut through the dark like a blade. Then came the envelope. She left it on the table one morning by mistake. Legal papers, property appraisals. It wasn't just talk anymore. She was planning something. Probably thinking I was too old, too slow, too blind to notice. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions. I folded the papers, tucked them away, and kept my face calm. But inside, a storm started to rise. I didn't have proof yet, not the kind that shatters lies clean in half, but I could feel it pressing against the walls. Something was wrong. And soon, she was going to show me exactly how deep that wrong went. I wasn't looking for it. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just waits in the dark, patient, until you open the wrong drawer. She'd left her work bag on the hallway bench. She never used to do that. I almost walked past it, but something inside me told me to stop. I opened it quietly. Inside was a small black notebook. She always guarded that thing like a lockbox. I flipped it open. The first page wasn't much. Schedules, meeting notes. But then I turned a few more pages, and there it was. Dinner reservations, hotel bookings, times, dates, and his name. My oldest friend. Written in the kind of handwriting that used to be saved for me. There was more. A copy of an appraisal document with our house circled in red ink and a lawyer's number written neatly at the bottom. My house, my land. The same place I broke my back building. They were already making plans. I stood there, reading line after line, and the world got quieter, not louder, quieter. Like my heart had stepped out of my chest to watch me face the truth alone. I slipped the notebook back exactly where I found it. She'd never know I saw it. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even cry. I just kept it close, like a blade tucked beneath the sleeve of my silence. Because in that moment, she thought she still had control. She didn't know that everything had already shifted. The game she was playing in the shadows was no longer a secret. Not to me. I remember standing in that hallway, holding the proof in my hands, feeling my heart beat slow instead of race. It wasn't rage, it was clarity. I knew exactly what she was doing, and for the first time, I saw her for who she'd become. Now let me ask you something. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have walked into that kitchen and confronted them? Or would you have stayed quiet and let the truth work for you? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear it. Some fights don't start with shouting. Some start in silence. The night it all boiled over didn't come with shouting. It came dressed like any other evening. We were sitting at the dinner table. She had that look on her face again, the one she wore when she thought she was already 2 steps ahead of me. She set her fork down and leaned back like she was preparing to deliver news she'd been rehearsing. "Harold," she said, smooth and careful, "I've been thinking, maybe it's time to sell the house, downsize, be practical." She didn't even blink. She said it like she wasn't tearing through decades of my life with that one sentence. Then she added, "It's too much for you to handle alone. We could both move on. You'll be fine." I looked across the table. She wasn't just talking about the house. She was talking about everything. My place, my name, my life. She thought I'd nod like a tired old man, too broken to fight. But I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I sipped my water, and I let her think she was winning. She leaned forward, thinking she'd cornered me. "I already spoke to someone about listing it," she said. "We'll have a clean break." Inside, the fire burned steady, controlled. On the outside, my face was calm, steady, silent. The kind of silence that makes liars keep talking. The kind that says, without a word, I already know everything. She thought she had me trapped, sitting across that table like a queen playing the last piece on the board. But I'd already set my move in silence. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and slid a single folded paper onto the table. Not the whole file, just one page. She looked at it, confused at first, then nervous. It was the property record. My name alone, not hers, not ours. Mine. She'd forgotten I handled every nail, every signature, every document when I built this place. She reached for it with shaky hands, pretending she wasn't rattled. "What's this supposed to mean, Harold?" she said, her voice too tight for someone who claimed to be calm. I leaned back, still quiet. I watched her eyes flicker across the paper, the realization creeping in. She thought she was pushing me out of something that was never hers to claim. "You can't just," she started, then stopped herself. Her throat tightened. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just gave her that same steady look. She wanted to corner me. Instead, she felt the floor shift under her feet. She was realizing this wasn't the easy escape she'd planned. That was the first crack in her confidence. And I didn't even have to raise my voice. She thought that one piece of paper was all I had. That was her mistake. Betrayers never imagine the quiet one keeps everything. She stared at me, trying to piece together her next move. Not realizing she'd already lost the game, I pulled out a second envelope from my jacket. Thicker, heavier. I placed it on the table with a quiet thud that made her flinch. Inside was everything. The updated will, the lawyer's letter, the financial transfer documents. Every account moved, every access she once had, gone. Her hands trembled when she opened it. I watched her eyes scan each page, her lips moving silently as she realized the truth. I had secured everything. The house, the savings, my land, and most importantly, the future she thought she could take from me. She whispered, "You can't do this," like it was some kind of prayer. But I already had. The moment she chose betrayal over loyalty, I chose silence over begging. I had called the lawyer weeks ago, changed everything quietly. She was standing in the ruins of her own plan. Then came the part she didn't expect. The small black recorder I placed on the table. I pressed play. Her voice filled the room, whispering promises to the man she thought I'd never suspect, talking about how she'd handle it once the house was in her name. Her face drained of color. She stumbled back in her chair, choking on her own shock. She wasn't just caught. She was cornered by her own greed. And I didn't have to say a single word. The room went still. No sound, no movement, just the sound of her breathing hard, like the walls were closing in on her. Her fingers fumbled with the papers, trying to find some escape that didn't exist. Her face turned pale, the kind of pale that comes when someone realizes they're not the hunter anymore. They're the one caught. She opened her mouth, but no words came out, not even a lie. The truth had already done what I never needed my anger to do. It had stripped her clean of every excuse, every sweet-sounding deception she ever tried to feed me. I sat there, calm, steady. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't give her a scene. She wanted chaos. I gave her truth. She wanted control. I handed her silence, and in that silence, everything she built on lies began to collapse. She pushed the papers back toward me like she could undo what was already written. "Please, Harold," she whispered, the same voice that used to sound like love. But it didn't move me anymore. That voice didn't belong to someone I trusted. I stood up, slow and deliberate, and looked at her one last time, not like the woman I loved, like a stranger standing in a house that was never hers. Justice didn't come with a fist or a scream. It came with truth, steady and cold, and she couldn't fight it. She'd gambled everything on greed, and lost it all to silence. Loyalty isn't something you bargain with. It's something you honor or you lose. People think age makes you weak, but it doesn't. It makes you quiet. It makes you patient. And patience isn't weakness. Patience is a blade that doesn't miss when it finally strikes. Betrayal doesn't have to be answered with noise. Sometimes the loudest revenge is silence backed by truth. I didn't need revenge to hurt her. I just needed to step back and let the truth stand tall on its own. That's the thing about lies. They crumble the second the light hits them. If someone ever takes your kindness for weakness, remember this. Quiet doesn't mean broken. It means you're listening, waiting, and planning. And when the time comes, the truth speaks louder than any scream. Thank you for sitting with me through this story. These kinds of truths are heavy, and sometimes they don't come wrapped in noise or rage. They come in silence, and that silence changes everything. If you've ever been in a situation where someone betrayed your trust, you know exactly how that quiet feels. I'd like to hear your thoughts. What would you have done if you were in my place? Would you have walked away quietly or confronted them face to face? Tell me down in the comments. Your words matter here.